Welcome back to the channel where we explore history's most creative ways to say, you messed up. Number 10. Impalement. This method was used as recently as 17th century Egypt, targeting road bandits, rebels, or those who thought robbing graves was a good career choice. Imagine you're a local bandit with a cause, thinking you're the star of your own action movie. Well, the Egyptian authorities had a very specific standing ovation waiting for you. This method was called impalement, but let's just call it the ultimate human shish kebab experience. Instead of a simple jail cell, the law enforcement would prepare a large wooden pole, generously greased like a fast food burger, to ensure things moved along smoothly. They didn't just hand it to you. They used a heavy mallet to help the pole make a grand entrance through the lower back door and exit via the shoulder balcony or even the mouth. The goal wasn't a quick exit from life. It was a long-term display of authority. These poles were planted along the roadside like the world's most terrifying billboards to deter the public. The logic was simple. See that guy? He's having a very bad Tuesday. Don't be like him. Some victims were positioned so skillfully that they could stay hanging out for hours, providing a grim reminder to passers-by that 17th century law was not something to be toyed with. It wasn't about the pain, okay? It was but for the state. It was about the art of deterrence. Talk about a permanent posture correction for anyone caught looting or starting a riot. Number 9. The Rat Dungeon. If you thought your landlord was bad, wait until you hear about the VIP suite at the Tower of London during the medieval period. Located at the very bottom, beneath the Thames water level, sat the Rat Dungeon. This wasn't just a basement. It was a waterfront property with a serious pest problem for those trapped in total darkness. When the tide rose, the river didn't just bring water. It brought a hungry, angry, welcoming committee of whiskers and tails from the riverbanks. Tucked away in the shadows, prisoners were chained up, making them the ultimate captive audience for hundreds of aggressive river rats. Imagine being stuck in a room where the only thing on the menu is, well, you. These rats weren't looking for cheese. They were looking for a multi-course meal, and since the prisoners couldn't move their hands or feet, they became a 24/7 buffet. It was a slow, dark, and incredibly nibbly process that could last for weeks until exhaustion or death finally arrived. Eventually, this became a formal form of execution where prisoners were thrown in and simply forgotten in the damp silence. It was the ultimate out of sight, out of mind management style in the heart of London. If the darkness didn't get to you, the constant tiny footsteps and the realization that you were becoming a snack certainly would. It's the kind of social interaction nobody asked for, involving a lot of biting and zero small talk. In the end, the Rat Dungeon became a legend of the tower, proving that sometimes the smallest roommates are the ones that cause the biggest headaches. Number 8. Poena Cullei, the sack of shame. This unique way of dealing with family issues first appeared in 2nd century Rome and was later used in 18th century Germany. If you decided to be the black sheep and do something unthinkable to a relative, you didn't just get a timeout. You got invited to a Poena Cullei, which is fancy Latin for the sack of shame. This was basically the world's most chaotic unboxing video, except you were the one being boxed with a mini zoo. The legal system would provide a heavy leather bag and stuff you inside with a dog, a roaster, a viper, and a monkey. It sounds like the start of a bad joke, but for the prisoner, it was the ultimate crowded commute. Once everyone was packed and ready, the bag was sewn shut and tossed into the deep blue ocean. The idea was to remove the criminal from the world of the living, the dead, and even the air itself. It was the ultimate cancel culture move for those who betrayed their own blood. In later years, the Roman courts sometimes gave you a choice. Take the sack tour, or head over to the Colosseum to be torn apart by wild beasts. Most people probably spent their final moments wondering why they were sharing a bag with a grumpy monkey and a snake. It was a punishment designed to be as humiliating as it was effective, ensuring that family reunions were kept peaceful. Talk about a very cramped bon voyage for those who couldn't play nice with their relatives. Number 7. Gibbetting. Next up, we're heading to Old England in early America for a bit of public art known as gibbetting. In England, after the 1752 Murder Act, all convicted killers had to be either publicly dissected or hung in a cage for all to see. Over in the US, pirates in 17th and 18th century Boston were often treated to this high-altitude experience. Forget about a cozy cell. Instead, you'd be fitted for a custom-made iron cage that was as tight as a pair of skinny jeans after a holiday feast. This cage ensured you couldn't move a muscle, and then you'd be hoisted up high in public squares or coastal areas. It was essentially a permanent human wind chime designed to rot for years, creating a massive stench for the surrounding area. No snacks, no water, just a lot of quality time with the local birds and the mockery of passers-by. The goal was to turn you into a long-term deterrent against treason and piracy. The last known use was recorded in Afghanistan in the early 1900s, later appearing in a 1921 National Geographic magazine. Gibbetting wasn't just about the end. It was about the after-party, where your remains served as a grim reminder for years. A truly uplifting experience that nobody wanted to sign up for. Number 6. Crushed by elephants. Let's talk about the ultimate heavyweight champion of punishments. Used most recently in 19th century India, this method proved that Dumbo could be your worst nightmare if you were on the wrong side of the law. This wasn't just a random stomp. It was a highly choreographed display of pachyderm power. One shocking historical case involved the 4th Mughal Emperor of India, who ordered the mass execution of criminals in a single day just for entertainment. There were 3 main styles of this extreme massage provided by these giant trained animals. First, the elephant would turn your head into a pancake on a stone block quick, efficient, and very messy. Second, the stroll in the park, where the giant animal would walk over your torso repeatedly until you decided to stop breathing. But the third method involved training elephants to crush limbs one by one with surgical precision before the final strike. Imagine being so bored you decide to watch a 4-ton animal perform aggressive physical therapy on your subjects for fun. It was a clear message of absolute power. We have elephants, and we aren't afraid to use them. It's safe to say that after a session like this, the victim definitely wasn't feeling like the king of the jungle, more like the king of being very, very flat. Number 5. Keelhauling. Next, we dive into a brutal sea punishment for sailors guilty of theft or getting a bit too aggressive with the crew. While specific years aren't always clear, historical records confirm this was the favorite team-building exercise of naval officers. It's called keelhauling, and it's basically the world's most intense, unsolicited skincare treatment on the high seas. Instead of a slap on the wrist, they would tie a rope around you and drag you right under the belly of the ship. Imagine the keel of an old ship as a giant, 50-ton cheese grater covered in razor-sharp barnacles and shells. As you're being pulled, these jagged sea creatures decide to perform an aggressive exfoliation on your skin. You weren't just facing the risk of drowning or a broken back. The barnacles would literally slice through flesh as you passed. If you somehow survived, you were often left with massive infections or scars that lasted a lifetime. It was a punishment designed to make you never want to look at a boat or a barnacle ever again. Talk about a deep-sea scuff that ruins your entire career and your weekend. Number 4. Rat torture. If you thought rodents were bad, history has used them as involuntary interrogation assistants in 2 terrifying ways. The first method, using a heated bowl, was famously used by Dutch leader Diederik Sonoy in 1568 during the 80 Years' War. They'd place a rat inside a bowl on the prisoner's torso and heat the top until the rat panicked from the heat. To escape becoming a barbecue, the rat would try to dig its way through the victim's body, creating a biological internal tunnel. But that's not all. A second method, called the rectoscope, was used much later under the dictatorship of Augusto Pinochet in Chile. between 1976 and 1983. This involved placing a rat into a tube inserted into the body to let it find its own way inside. It wasn't just physical, it was the psychological dread of being part of a rodent's desperate escape plan. Whether in the 16th century or the late 20th, the goal was to break the will of anyone who stood against the regime. It's definitely the kind of roommate drama that no amount of complaining to the landlord could ever fix. Number 3. The rack. The rack was used in many places throughout history to force confessions, but its most famous home was the Tower of London. A striking historical record from 1447 mentions a 25-year-old woman named Anne Askew. She was tortured on the rack for hours by legal officials for the crime of spreading the Bible during a time of religious tension. The setup was simple. Your wrists were tied to one end, your ankles to the other, and the rollers would do the stretching. As they turned the handles, you'd begin to feel like a piece of candy being stretched at a very slow factory. The goal was to provide enough incentive for you to share secrets by making your joints go on a permanent vacation. In Anne Askew's case, she was stretched so much she couldn't even stand, yet they eventually burned her at the stake. Most victims ended up paralyzed or with limbs that were significantly longer but much less functional than before. It's the kind of stretching routine that would make even the most hardcore yoga instructor run for the hills. Truly a high-tension situation in 15th century London that nobody ever wanted to be a part of. Number 2. Scaphism. The ancient Persians had a punishment for those convicted of murder that sounded like a spa treatment until you saw the reality. It was called Scaphism, and the writer John Zonaras provided a detailed and horrifying description of this brutal method. The victim was sandwiched between two boats and forced to consume massive amounts of milk and honey until they were physically ill. Once the internal chaos kicked in, they were also painted with honey to attract every insect in the area. Pushed out into a stagnant pond under the sun, you became a 24/7 buffet for every bug and rodent nearby. Zonaras described a case where a victim actually survived for 17 days while being slowly consumed by nature. It was a slow, agonizing process of being recycled while you were still very much using your body. Imagine the psychological horror of seeing your own body become a colony for the local swamp life under the heat. It's definitely the record for the world's most miserable and long-lasting camping trip ever recorded. It turns out that having too much of a good thing like honey can be a real 17-day nightmare. Number 1. The Oubliette. Finally, we reached the number 1 spot, used at the Tower of London, Warwick Castle, and most famously, Leap Castle in Ireland. The name comes from the French word oublier, which literally means to forget, and that's exactly what they did. Imagine a stone chamber so small and narrow that you can't stand, sit, or find any comfort at all. In 1900, during a renovation of Leap Castle, workers discovered an oubliette filled with the skeletons of hundreds of people. These were the souls who had been dropped through a trapdoor and simply left to die from hunger or dehydration. It turns out, the forgotten part wasn't just a metaphor. It was a permanent architectural feature of these dark fortresses. No light, no conversation, and definitely no mercy from the castle owners who had the keys. It was the ultimate form of ghosting, centuries before the internet or social media even existed. Those skeletons found in 1900 are a chilling testament to the cruelty of being permanently erased from existence. It's a reminder that sometimes the most effective punishment is the absolute silence of a stone vault. It's the ultimate quiet room that remains a dark stain on human history. And that wraps up our countdown of the most spine-chilling punishments throughout human history. From the 17th century deserts of Egypt to the hidden vaults of Leap Castle, history has a very dark sense of justice. But now, I want to hear from you. Which one of these 10 methods made your skin crawl the most? Was it the 17-day survival in Scaphism? Or the crowded commute of Poena Cullei? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this journey into the darker side of history, make sure to hit that subscribe button right now. Don't miss out on more fascinating and bizarre topics that you definitely won't find in your average history book. Join our community today for more incredible stories.